everybody. How are you guys doing? Good. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. I'll wait till if you can make me a host or enable me to share my screen. Okay, here we go. There, and I just brought it up. Here we are. Okay, just to review. Slideshow. So we went through all this, the Bucharest early intervention study, so interesting. And thank you so much for the slides. Oh my gosh, the slide of the brain. And we talked about this, we talked about fetal alcohol syndrome. And I thought I would maybe emphasize how much validation counts. And because we are talking about an entire population of people who have been gaslighted for so long by so many. There's a really good movie out that I just started watching. I'm just going to look. Oh, here we go. There's a really good movie out that I just started watching called Crip Camp. It's about an hour, CRIP camp, about years ago, a camp for folks with disabilities. And then they tell their story about their life. And you can just get this glimpse into how marginalized people were. And it was like a camp run by hippies, like around the time of Woodstock. And they just embrace everybody. And they show, footage of the camp, but then they tell stories. And it's really nice on Netflix. So here's where I put the diagnostic overshadowing in, as per Karen and in our discussion. So in between the ACE study and the exposure to cocaine and alcohol. Are you guys good with that? Okay, good. I love that we talked about that. And I love that you said that, Karen, because it's such a big deal, isn't it? We just see it so much. Okay. And we went to the multiple intelligences. So important. I showed you being an unperson, right? We looked at that video, or maybe not.
We did in the other the training you did with us, but not.
Should I show it? Because are people going to watch this that hadn't seen the other training? Oh, well, never mind.
I guess we could ask, is everybody seeing that when Karen talks about the unperson, does everybody remember that one? Or do we need to show it? Because I mean, I think I could use that one every month to cry.
Okay, I'm going to show it just because I have a couple of videos I want to show you. We have a nice chunk of time to go through this. So, and we looked at the four. Okay, we looked at the four. Maybe we can edit the tape. I feel so bad. I'm stumbling along here.
It sounds like in the chat that Karen, that a lot of people are saying that they haven't seen the unperson.
So, okay, let's watch that now. And I just have a quick question. Did I go through the 4 symptom areas of PTSD with you guys?
No.
No, we were about to do it. Next time I will take notes. Let the record record that I will be taking notes from now on. I'm so confused. My other group, I went through it and now I'm on to the biology. Here I haven't gone through it. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and start again and optimize. Oh, it won't let me optimize for video. How weird. Okay, I'll try again. Oh, okay, stop sharing. We'll start again. I don't know, it's not giving me optimize for video clip. I wonder why. Let's see what happens when I try to show it. It does have, oh, maybe advanced. Oh, well, no. Okay. Okay, who knows? All right, I'm going to share my screen and hopefully you'll hear it. Stop me if you're not hearing it. And sorry, I don't have it queued up. I need to take it here. Okay. And I showed the bullying as part of mine. So I'm going to show you things that I think are helpful for everybody. I suggest you show at least one clip in doing your training. Because as I said earlier, right, it's so important to have the voice of people with disabilities. I think that's really critical, you know, however you can do it. But so YouTube is such a wonderful way, especially if we're doing an online training. Okay, here we go.
It means.
All right.
This is from the handout I gave.
Can you guys see that? Okay, and can you hear it?
Speaking in a training
Okay.
for staff who work for people with.
Let me just, for those of you who haven't seen it, let me just give you a little bit of the background. This is a person, Amanda Baggs. Actually, Amanda, the last year of their life became non-binary, and Amanda is Mel, but sadly Mel passed away last year around this time from a respiratory illness. So it kind of sounded like COVID, tragically. But there are a series of videos under the name Silent Meow on YouTube. And Mel talks about having autism. But this one is so powerful because Mel talks about their own experience of being in an institution, then being in a group home, then being in their own apartment, you know, because this is the thing to do each time. It's okay, this is the thing to do. Mel doesn't speak verbally, as so many folks with autism don't, but Mel uses a device. And I actually have done therapy with someone using a device. Like you can do it. You can do it. And then I'll probably next week, I'll show you a little bit, another one similar of someone who uses a device. But so, and then at the end, Mel talks about the evolution of disabilities and services in the disability world. Like people were freaks in circuses, they were used for research, like horrible things. So Mel, in the end, that's what Mel is referring to. So here we go. Back to the beginning.
This is from the handout I gave while speaking in a training for staff who work for people with developmental disabilities. It is about what it means to be dehumanized, and it applies to a far broader group of people than the original audience. It is to make this clear about something that is done to us by other people, not something intrinsic to who we are. Being an unperson means that people talk in front of you as if you aren't there. If they know you understand them, it means you're not enough of a person for it to matter. It means listening to staff gossip, saying things they would not dare say in front of real people. It means hearing their bluntest viewpoints about you out loud, to your face, with the person behind that face unacknowledged. It means hearing confidential information about other unpersons. Being an unperson means that your life is not a real life. It means being treated worse than most people would treat their own pet gerbil, and with less guilt. It means that your existence seems to fill people with disgust and fear. People see and describe you as a hollow shell, a body without a soul, a shambling child, or a vegetable. Or else they romanticize your life, calling you a special angel on earth. Whatever they call you, people refuse to see that you exist at all. Being an unperson means being considered non-communicative. If you somehow, once in a blue moon, manage to communicate in speech, those words will be seen in pathological terms rather than communicative ones. If you communicate in writing, people will question your authorship. If you communicate with behavior, you will be punished, restrained, drugged, or put on a behavior program. No matter how clever and intricate a communication system you devise, you will be described as incapable of true communication. Being an unperson means having all the true communication drummed out of you. It means having your behavior and words, if you have them, molded to fit what other people want or expect of you. It means having this molding placed on you like a straitjacket. It means screaming and screaming inside your head that you are a real person, but nothing gets out. On the rare occasion that something does get out, an action that is from your desires rather than your training, an oral or written statement that you really are a real person and feel trapped, you will be punished, ridiculed, or ignored. Being an unperson means being treated like a child, which should really make people think about how they view children, or at best like a beloved pet. It means that if you do something real, important, and meaningful to you, people will think it's cute. They have a special laugh reserved for that. It means being spoken to in a voice people normally use on children. Being an unperson means being brutalized. An unperson can't tell about beatings, rape, torture, and murder. If she does, she will not be believed. An unperson knows that the law will never come to his aid, not the way it does for real people. If he dies, here, today, at the hands of another, it will not be considered murder. Being an unperson means being expendable and interchangeable with all the other unpersons of the world. An unperson means living up to low expectations. It means being punished or shamed for showing emotion, awareness of your environment, or originality of thought. It means that once you no longer show these things outwardly, except maybe to a few other unpersons who know what you're doing, people take one look at your most superficial appearance and declare you even more of an unperson. Being an unperson means being hated. Not always in an overt emotional way. It means people want you to be a real person. Which sounds good until you realize they don't believe you are a person already. They want to shape you into someone else, or else use you like a blank projector screen for their fantasies. Sometimes they tell you they want to reel you back, as if you're not there. Being an unperson means that your existence as who you are is denied at the deepest level by those around you. And that, being erased, is the true nature of hate. Rage is nothing in comparison to erasure. Being an unperson means that if you must hurl your abilities, everything you have learned over the years, and attempt to advocate for yourself in any possible way you know how, you will be labeled manipulative, attention-seeking, or a bad or difficult client. You learn that people like to work with the good clients. The ones who have been so twisted by being treated as unpersons that they are completely passive and compliant. You realize from memory of being like that no person on the planet should ever be twisted that far. But when you tried to stand up for yourself, to break out of terrified submission, then you are labeled aggressive and hostile and treated accordingly. Being an unperson means that you are not allowed to want what anyone else would want in your situation. Being an unperson means being at the mercy of the theories other people have about you. It means having communication given to you one day, maybe the first day in your life, and then taken away the next when this is considered a fad or a hoax or just too bothersome to the staff's routine. It means being thrown in big nasty institutions when that is considered protective, then broken away from your friends and sent to littler but just as nasty institutions when that is considered progressive, and then isolated from everyone in your own apartment when that is considered radical, no matter what your desires ever were in the whole matter. It means being tortured and killed as a demonic changeling, displayed as a circus freak, used medically as a lab animal, and tortured and killed in the name of treatment or medicine or protection, with the changing of time and culture. Staff people always say they are not like this. Last time I told a staff person about how other staff abused me, she laughed and told me the other staff at that place didn't abuse people. Within hours, I watched her and other staff laugh while they made another inmate beg like a dog for a glass of water and a change of socks. People need to show they are not like this, not say it, if we are to believe them. I have been a nut person. Now I'm sometimes a nut person and sometimes a real person, depending on who is around me. The difference between a nut person and a real person is not a difference of what is called degree or kind of impairment or disability. There is no line you can draw and correctly say that on this side of the line lay the real people, and on the other side you only have the unpersons. There is no such thing as a true unperson. An unperson is a ghost, a prejudice in people's minds. Those of us considered unpersons by others are aware of this prejudice when it is planted in us. In the end, there are only real people, and the ghost of the unperson is projected on top of some of us.
So would you like me to put that link in the chat? So they've made a number of them. Would you like me to put that link in the chat?
Yes, I think that'd be helpful.
Okay.
Yes, please.
All righty.
I think every new employee needs to see that or annually
And ask me what
at least.
I agree. All right, this is going to take me a minute. I can do that during the break. Why don't we do that so I don't waste your time? Here we go. All right. That is so powerful, right? And I mean, I hear it once a week, right? Because I'm always showing it, and I always still hear something new or get a different angle, you know. And what always stands out to me is where she says rage, or they say rage is nothing in comparison to erasure. You know, that, and that just, to me, that summarizes what so many folks with disabilities have been through, just the marginalization and that, you know, warehousing and pushing aside the whole history of just being unseen and unheard, and how perfect that she calls it being an unperson. They call it being an unperson, working on that pronouns. So, I mean, I think to me that's so profound. And to me, that's like such a critical part of therapy, right? To see the unseen, to hear the unheard. So it's not like you need a lot of skills. Well, you already have lots of skills. You're a very skilled group of people with training, degrees, intelligence, but really so much of it is validating people's existence and praising them and talking to them about their life as though they are the hero of it. And they are heroes, you know, the hero of their life, the protagonists of their story, and really reflecting that back, I think, is so critical and such a big piece of therapy and so important. Okay, and I will, right, I'm glad we watched that. Thank you. And back to my screen. Okay. Okay, so, and I have to, it automatically gives me captions every time. So here I have this just impactful statement because you are going to have people referred to you based on the fact that they've had behavior problems sometimes. I mean, you may have very enlightened people saying, I just think this person needs therapy, which is wonderful because more and more people are starting to get that. And thank you so much for training therapists, for being a therapist, for being willing to do this. It's so great. But you're going to get people that are going to say, this person's behaviors are off the hook. This person's having a behavior problem. The behavior plan isn't working. They're non-compliant. It's my least favorite word in the dictionary, non-compliant. Oh, so who's compliant, right? Please. Yeah. Oh, they're non-compliant. Like we're just the boss and they have to comply, but really they're just trying to live their life. So you're going to get all kinds of things like that. And oftentimes as the behavior is actually a symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder because of everything we've taught people early on, right? So we taught them, okay, here's the sources of trauma. Sexual abuse of people with disabilities is off the hook. You see it so much. This is very impactful. These things happen, and also people are marginalized. They're restrained. They're secluded. Restraints and seclusion cause a lot of trauma. If they've been institutionalized, there's always so much trauma from institutionalization. So we've built up that case that the trauma is there. We've talked about the ACE. We've talked about the fact that, and that these things are very impactful, right? Talked about neglect. And so here we are, and big T, little t traumas, they can all lead to post-traumatic stress disorder. So then we go into the areas of PTSD, re-experiencing, avoidance, negative alteration, cognition and mood, arousal. These are the four main areas as outlined in the DSM-5. Re-experiencing. So I have done work with a number of people who have just been in a loop. Often it's about grief, like somebody who died, and their intrusive memories and re-experiencing. One big sign of this is that the past is present, right? So they're in that loop talking about things that happened maybe a long time ago, but they can't get out of the loop, right? It's so traumatizing. It's so much. And you're just talking about it over and over and over and over. Nightmares. A lot of folks have nightmares and are sometimes misdiagnosed because they don't want to sleep. So they're diagnosed with having a bipolar disorder or mania, but they're just afraid of sleeping because they have nightmares. I've worked with several people like that. But nightmares are quite a symptom. So I always ask people about their dreams. Because it turns out so many people that I've worked with have had reoccurring nightmares. And one thing I've done a couple of things. I do a guided imagery with people where they go back to the dream and they fix it. So, or I've done EMDR on the actual nightmare as though it were an event and process it and let it go. So to actually work with the actual nightmare is very helpful. It's been helpful, at least in my practice. Yeah, Karen.
I had similar experiences. I've done the where I would, using their imagination to go back in the story and ask them, and it takes, several sessions for them to kind of grasp. Well, actually, just the repetitiveness is what changes the brain, and so that, and to help them to say, how would you, what were you like? How old were you? Well, what would you do if you had a bat? Or I'm just saying, what if you could do something? Or if you could call in somebody, what would you do? And that just seemed to change it, because one of my clients is really lots of her trauma was at night, which is not unusual. And but that being able to do, figure out what to do, or we would do grounding exercises when you woke up, but also then, and doing things that kind of get her, attuned to today, But at the same time, it was about like, it was almost, it was so powerful for her to go back in that memory and to actually change it, like, and to think about it and to think that, you know, it's really, it took the power away from the dream where she's like, I have, so then her dreams began to change. It wasn't as often. And if it did, it was kind of like, I don't like them versus, you know, the sense of like, it just happened, which, you know, for a lot of times that can be the way our clients respond because they don't always understand the difference between my brain having a dream versus that this literally just happened and having to learn to break that down so that they know they're okay right now, you know, et cetera. How can they keep themselves safe, et cetera, to feel safe and good right now?
Can you go over what you did exactly with the bat? Like how you use that technique, like giving her a weapon or whatever? Can you kind of,
Well, actually, I don't know if I gave her a weapon, honestly. It's been a couple of
whatever you did? I
So
just want to
whatever I did is I just kind of helped asked her, you know, where we kind of like first talked about like her being in her, like in her house, in her room. And I just asked her, well, what would the dream be about? Her dream particularly was about like, because she was actually she was sexually assaulted at night by
Oh,
her family members.
oh,
So, probably mostly by her brothers, but anyway, so she had this fear. So then, of course, night in the dark was always, of course, it would be bad. It'd be bad for anyone. So having a light in the room, but we just started talking about like, so just what was it like in that room? How old were you? Because sometimes I like to help people to understand that my client is an adult, a grown, you know, not just a 20-year-old girl. She's a, you know, old, more middle-aged woman. And so I was trying to help her to see, oh, so you see yourself as a little kid because that was really bad. And I would just kind of process that was really bad back then. But wait a minute, you're an adult.
I see. Yeah.
You're older than he is now. And just like how that would change her a view of kind of like not like she's a little kid any longer, but that she's in a grown up. And then being able to say, well, what would you do in that situation? If you walked in on somebody like that, what would you do? And just kind of, well, I would, you know, and then she'd say, you know, I would yell, I would want to scream, I'd want to, whatever it would be that kind of came to her mind, that we kind of go with that and just kind of say, and sometimes it's kind of like knowing, well, is there a light in the room? You know, can you pretend like you're putting the light on, and do you have something there that you could do? Or do you like to keep the light on? Because maybe it's not as scary that, in the dream that maybe if you had a light, then he wouldn't be, well, he's not as creepy, he doesn't have as much power if it's not dark. And just kind of like going through, and then it would be
Nice.
telling them, well, you would, if you wanted to have like something that you could hit somebody with, because I would if someone was trying to hurt me like that, then where would you have it and how would you have it? And then saying like, you know, but often they're usually not like weapon people. They're more like, I'm going to scream and that somebody can come help me and rescue me. Who would come rescue you? Who do you want to come in that room? And, you know, and then just kind of processing, like, how does that feel that somebody came in that room and said, and beat him up and took him away and gave you a hug, you know, and like that kind of thing. And that kind of can help them to kind of like, and even though it just begins to change the brain. I mean, it just begins to change and that's really the process. Obviously the event didn't change, but the sense that the brain begins to say, oh, this is like, I have power over this.
Yeah, you change the brain and you change the dream, which is really important. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I was wondering where the bat fit in. And so and there's this psychoeducational piece as well that I think is so important. So, and as we hear, I'm going to go back to the screen. Okay. Oh, sorry. So when you are going through it, I love that psychoeducational piece. Okay, yeah, you can change your dream. You can change your brain. You can. This is from your brain, and when people are really having any of these 4 symptom areas, I think it's so important to do that psychoeducational piece. And we went through intelligence, right? And I'm going to show you another video a little bit later. Just, you know, assume intelligence. Maybe I'll do that one next week, but assume intelligence. People get it. right, Karen? Like you're talking to people and they're understanding way more than we think they are, especially if we can use simple language. Like if you use simple language, you can still convey pretty complex thoughts and concepts, because people need to be educated, and they're looking for what is it that I'm going through and why does this happen to me? So they're seeking it. And so
I found with nightmares that people, often staff, can want to dismiss it in a way that's like, that didn't have, almost like if I woke up screaming and I was upset, that people, and I think all adults do this actually, is that they were more focused on like, well, it didn't happen, it's real, this you're here now, that was just a dream. I don't know about you, but when I've had bad dreams, it don't matter that I'm not in that trauma right now. It is like emotional. And what I need right then is like a sense of comfort, a sense that, it's going to be okay. And it was a dream, but you're going to be okay. And can I get you a drink of water? Just a kindness. That's often when we need kindness, not a sense of I'm not in the dream. That dream isn't real. Well, you know what, frankly, it might be real. It might have been, that might be more of a memory. And we just have to be kind to people to say, I don't know why you have that. It could be symbolic of something that happened. And sometimes we're not, that's where the compassion is needed. We're always so logical. It's like, well, we're glad there's no trauma right this second, but in my brain, whoo.
exactly. And that's the thing. This is very real for folks. This is very real. So, going through it, I think it's very important. And I'm glad you shared that, and that dream in particular for someone who has a history of being sexually abused. Okay, you're dreaming it, turn on the light, scream for help, change it. I love that. So, and flashbacks. And here's another piece that I think is important to help people kind of identify when they're being triggered, when they might be flashing back. Do you kind of start remembering things? And so many people that I know have part of their hearing voices is hearing someone who used to say something horrible to them. I think you made a reference to that, Karen, last time, but a voice that where, oh, you're a bad person, or nothing you do is right, or you're the R word. And they are flashing back onto that voice, reporting that they're hearing voices, getting diagnosed with schizophrenia and medicated in a very heavy way with antipsychotics, developing diabetes sometimes. This is a vicious cycle when those voices are actually a flashback. So, I have deconstructed that voice. And wait a minute, do you think that is similar to what you heard your father saying to you, which was so wrong? And that was not the right way to talk to anybody? Would you talk to someone now that you're an adult, you know how to talk to a child? Would you do that? Maybe he had some problems because that was the wrong way to talk to someone, and you're hearing his voice in your head. Yeah, it is exactly what he says. That is him. So sometimes people are having a flashback and their voices, but they're the voice of people who have hurt them in the past. And I have come across that actually quite a bit. And as you can identify that with them and say, okay, that person has no right to be in your head. They don't belong there. And you get them out, right? No trespassing, right? Nobody can come into my head that I didn't invite. And working that person through, identifying when it comes up to, like I do thought stopping, some cognitive behavioral stuff like, okay, out. I have one person that will just say stop out loud, stop. And that just helps them a lot the minute they start hearing those tapes. I mean, we do that with our folks who don't have disabilities, right? So this is very, very important though, because so many bad things have been told to people with disabilities. And sometimes they've incorporated it. So that flashback as well. Avoidance, the phobias, right? We have so many people with so many phobias. And those phobias are almost always related to something horrible that happened. You know, we always say, well, they have irrational phobias. They're not irrational. There's always a reason. Like fear of the dark, like your poor person who was abused in the dark. I'd be afraid of the dark too, right? And all these, and then there's the shutdown response. So you probably won't get the folks who aren't talking, but there are a number of people that I've worked with who we all thought did not use words and then turned out to be selectively mute.
Wow.
And all of a sudden started talking. I'm thinking about 3 of them right now who had a lot of trauma history and would just sit and be, you know, obviously something horrible happened when they last spoke. And then, you know, if you're safe enough, finally they start talking. But that shutdown response, the dissociation. So hypervigilance, dissociation. So you're not, I'm going to jump to dissociation and then I'll go back because it kind of relates to the shutdown response. I might even want to switch those. But we're not going to see people with multiple personalities in all likelihood. That takes a lot of cognitive ability, right, to form different cells. But we are probably going to see, we're going to see maybe that detachment from reality, that not present. I've seen a lot of people, you know, not present, right, frozen, just, oh, this reality isn't safe, so I will do everything I can to not be in it.
Disassociation sounds like a gift sometimes.
Exactly. It's how you're staying safe, right? Well, I'm not sure about this reality. So, and sadly, they won't get referred to you either. But that's, I have worked with one person who had an alternate personality, but there was just one, and that was the person that had the behavior problems. She's like, that's Tammy. I'm Tamika. So.
Karen, when you were speaking earlier about like the negative thoughts, I thought and how, you know, the people have said all the time that we aren't even aware of because they happen so often for our clients. And I thought of how often when I'm working with people that are on the autism spectrum, that they are like a computer chip when it comes to remembering their memory. They did, you know, you told them something last week, it's a contract. They remember things in a way that is a little bit more than I think that most average people do. And so I wonder how much even with that makes it even that much more harder for them to like let go of that tape.
Exactly. And that's the, you know, and that's where I go to the hypervigilance. That's why I said, let me come back to the hypervigilance, because a number of people with autism that I've worked with have had that symptom area where they're just in a loop and they're just so, everything has to be this way and it has to be in order and I have to have control over my life. And I've seen a number of people with autism really have that hypervigilance and just be so obsessed about, you know, I've got to have this in line and this in line and this in line and this way, this, and you know, I tell the story about this one guy who was being sexually abused. And so his rituals became out of control and we couldn't interrupt them, of course, because he would completely lose it. And then we found out he was being sexually abused, and he used to have little tiny rituals and just do a little bit. And then all of a sudden it was all day long. And we realized, there's something really wrong. And when we found out, because his housemate reported that he was being sexually abused, that was those rituals were his hypervigilance, right? So that is really, really a big deal. And I've seen it a lot with folks with autism. Like the world is very scary when you have autism. You know, it's a very scary world. And I'd like to talk, maybe we'll talk a little bit more about autism and focus on it, because I think a lot of the referrals you get will be with folks with autism, and maybe look at some videos, because a lot of people will hide in those rituals, will try to find safety in those rituals, will try to, whatever they're obsessing about is making them feel safe very frequently. And they're not feeling safe. So that's the thing. Okay. And then blocked memories. So I'm sure many of you have worked with folks without disabilities who just don't remember big chunks, right? And that's the brain is protecting itself. And there's a lot of controversy about dealing with that, right? How to deal with that. Do we try to pull up these memories? So my approach is that life is hard enough for people to just deal with the present. And sometimes what happens is as they're feeling safer in their life and as they're getting more of a sense of self and a sense of control over their life, they may then remember something and be ready to deal with it. But I don't push it. I take my cues from them. If there's something they're blocked about, I'm not trying to dig until they let me know that they're starting to open up to what's something that happened and they're ready to talk about it. And often that takes years, right? Yeah. I'm working with someone now, or it takes an event. I'm working with someone who was sexually abused by her brother in her mother's home, and she was in foster care and then back to the mother's home and got abused, and she's returning to her mother's home. So now we're starting to deal with that because she had really blocked a lot of it. And because of that event and that change, now it's not the same home, it's a different home, but it's her mother, it's the others, it's not the brother's not there, thank goodness, but it's still now she's ready to work on it. Before she would refer to it. I'm like, we could do EMDR about this. I don't really remember it. But now this moving back is like, okay, yeah, she's starting to talk about it and process her feelings about her mom because she's moving back with her mom who was there. So interesting, right? But I've learned if I don't dig, but I make a very safe place in that therapeutic relationship, then it often does come. Okay. Negative alteration, cognition, mood. And here's where someone may be referred to you with depression. Thank goodness we're finally recognizing depression in people with disabilities, right? For years, we said, oh, they're just, they just don't care. They're just like that. But that sense of impending doom, bless you, Karen. You're one of the few people I can see, bless you. That sense of impending doom is actually a symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder. That feeling like nothing good will ever happen to me. My life is terrible. My life's going to be terrible. I'm a bad person with the bad life, and nothing good will ever happen. I'll never have a girlfriend. I'll never have a boyfriend. I'll never be able to work. I'll never have this. I'll never have that. Nobody cares about me. So these negative views. And here's where your basic training as therapists comes in great. You can deconstruct these negative views and really do some cognitive work with people on them. Yeah, but look how much your housemates like you, and look how much you do for other people, and really trying to rebuild that sense of self and hope and what you do what you do what you do, you know how to do it, and really try to instill hope, right? And help them find that hope somewhere. And because that is, again, and that's the whole thing with PTSD is people are stuck in the past, and in the past bad things happen, so bad things will happen in the future, right? So that's that negative belief and that delusion. Bad things happen to me, that's who I am. No, bad things happened in the past, but now, like Karen was saying, now you're an adult, you're bigger than that person was, you're independent, you have the ability to stick up for yourself, you know what to do now, you're not in that vulnerable place. I do that, so much of that work with people, just like, no, now you are someone who really is in control of your life. Now, if that happened to you now, you wouldn't even let it happen. What if it started to happen? What would you say? Oh, I would tell them to leave me alone. Thank you. Before you felt powerless. Now you know you're an adult and you have power. So, just reiterating, like Karen, you were saying, the changing the brain, just getting that new neural pathway over and over again. You're an adult. You're an adult. You have this power. A person like that has no power over you. You would know what to do. So do what you do, right? And you just do it again. Maybe you have to do it a little bit more and a little bit more slowly and use simple language, but we know how to work with this. And that's really effective. It's very effective because you're an authority to that person too, right? So if you say it, it has power as well. You're the therapist. And that's very impactful. And then, and that's why I think I shared before, I like in the last 15 minutes, if that person has a staff that they're working with, to bring that staff in. Or if there's a family member, like I said before, to bring that family member in the last 15 minutes. Hey, Joe was thinking that nothing ever works out for him, but we were talking about how things are working out and how much there is to look forward to, and what else is going on that Joe can be looking forward to, or what else are you proud of about Joe? Just engaging them as part of a treatment team approach, like so that they have that involvement and that they're not, talking to you in a vacuum. And sometimes people will kind of confabulate and tell you these wild stories that aren't necessarily true. But one thing, they're always emotionally true. So I've had people say, well, they lie to you. They told you this and this and this, and it wasn't true. Or it may be a lie, but there's true emotion. And sorry about that. That's what I've experienced, is that the emotion is real. And they're going to say, maybe they have a mean staff person who said something demeaning to them, and they have already reported that this person said something and nobody cared. So they say that staff hit me, but the staff didn't hit them. Then they come to you, say, Joe's making false accusations and Joe lies. I've had so many people refer someone to me saying they lie. Okay. And you listen to the lies or whatever it is that they're saying, but there's always real emotion there, and then process the emotion and kind of ignore the big details and the confabulation, but go to the emotion. So your feelings are a little hurt by this person. So your feelings are hurt when this person hasn't really been there for you. Not going into because the problem is, right, we still have to go back to staff, and we have to check, and we have to probably report. If the person's consistent with that story, we have to report. That's a hard one. And because, of the position we're in, but what my experience is if they're really not telling something true, and you process and process and process, then the truth comes out. If you accept the emotion. So by the end of the session, you'll have the real story. Otherwise, I'll engage the management. But this is a part of the challenge. We have this challenge, right? Yeah, Karen.
When you mentioned lying, it reminded me of something I was taught or read a long time ago about just attachment. And I think it applies because I think often, it can be very moralistic in terms of lying or not lying. And I remember reading this article and it was really for like discussing like abuse and neglect. And it was saying that lying didn't begin when the child said, I didn't take that cookie, or I didn't wet my pants. Lying began when they were lying in the crib, crying because they were hungry, and they had to tell themselves, I don't need to eat right now.
Wow. That is so powerful.
It just like, it changes the whole moralistic, and why sometimes people who are overly traumatized, who have experienced a lot of trauma, and this of course applies to neurotypical clients as well, but it's such a powerful statement of understanding that lying we always think of it often morally, and often like right or wrong. And really it's about the fact that back in the day, you know, when I was a baby, when I couldn't have a voice, that my, you know, was I not met? If those needs weren't met, that often that lying, like I had to tell myself, I don't need these things.
Oh, it's so heartbreaking. And I'm looking at the chat. That is really, oh, it just tears your heart out. It really does. And it's the truth. It's the truth. So lying is a way of protecting oneself. And I always talk about people who are sexually abused. Lying was survival. They were told to lie or else they would be in big trouble.
Right. I
Right?
think from early childhood, it's like intuitively, regardless of our, like you said, our intelligence often is very high in survival. And it is about us learning, like if I can't, I might not be able to explain it, but I figure out you're safe, you're not safe. This is how I can stay safe with you. Oh, there's more ways I could stay, you know, with this person who's kind of scary. I mean, we're not able to express it necessarily or what it was, but we can tell. And our little brains when we're children figures that out. And that's how we survive. It's a lot of times even, you know, adults, when they say you lied to me, it's like, well, did I lie to you, or was it that something about you kept me feeling not safe? Now that doesn't mean that we don't want to speak the truth and blah blah blah. But I feel like so often we are focused on the right and the wrong versus that feeling that, like you said, how we survive. We survive by learning to be intuitive.
Exactly. Exactly. And maybe telling ourselves a story.
Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Thanks. And Liz had a good point in the chat. I see back to it's okay to deal with the emotion and self-care instead of remembering or reliving the event. I agree with that so strongly. Like, and take your cues from that person. And it's kind of similar with the lying, right? So take your cues with that person and understand a lot of this is what they've done to be safe. They've blocked things and they lie, right? Because I would too. And I would say just about almost all the people that I work with that were sexually abused have some way of creating crises or lying. They all get diagnosed with a borderline personality disorder. You know, it's this whole pattern that came from this is what they did to stay safe, right? Like I lied and I had to compromise and I had to pretend and I had to do it all to stay safe. Oh, thank you. This is great, great dialogue. And back to, okay. And okay. So then finally, the hyperarousal, the agitation. We see a lot of folks who really, you know, they have this behavioral history of aggression or property destruction, and it's all about being hyperaroused. It's all about feeling unsafe, having that amygdala fill them up with all kinds of chemicals, right? And they are just on edge, full of adrenaline and cortisol and I've seen this so much, but oftentimes, you know, they may be presented as someone who's very aggressive and you know, really has no regard for others, doesn't care about people, and you know, is manipulative, when all of it has been because they felt unsafe and this was how they protected themselves from abusers a long time ago, and this is how they stay safe, by threatening aggression. You know, so you make that safe place in that therapeutic relationship. You make the safest place you can make, and then you give as much acceptance, right? Like, okay, listen, you did what you did, don't, because there often is so much shame around these arousal behaviors, right? I'm a bad person, I broke the TV, I'm a horrible person, or I hit my mother, right? The terrible, sad stories I keep hearing. And yeah, you were so aroused at the time. You were in a terrible state. You didn't mean it. versus everybody now is, labeled you. And I worked with a number of people who had been arrested, and they, the whole system has labeled them as someone who's dangerous and someone who has all these issues. And so much of it was they were triggered and they were in a hyper aroused state. So how can we make a safe place for healing? A safe place for healing. And that's really, really the critical issue. Because then they can calm down. And I've seen so many people be with staff that they don't feel safe with and have property destruction and aggression and all kinds of agitation. And then they're moved, or the staff changes and they're with a staff that is able to convey caring, and they calm down. So that also, that who is in their immediate environment is so critical. And I've worked with a number of people who really needed to move out of the family home, because that's where the aggression was occurring. That's where, in fact, this one guy, I never forget, he put holes in the wall. He did all this stuff. And I knew his mom pretty well. And he was very angry. He gave his sister a black eye the day she was going to the prom. So sad, right? But he was really demonized by the family. Like, he's a problem. He's the problem. And he was the problem, but he was also in this state of hyper arousal and agitation a lot of the time, because you don't know what might have triggered him. But we took him in our agency. I encouraged her, yeah, the dad died, and who knows what was going on there. But in any case, he moved to our agency. I had this elaborate behavior plan and trained all the staff. We thought there'd be holes in the walls, there'd be things broken. Nothing. Zero. Years of no issues. Because he kept saying, I got my own place now. I'm with my homies. I'm hanging out. He saw his sister move out. He was labeled the problem. All of a sudden, he was just one of the guys. And he didn't have any of these behavioral issues. And I realized, he was in this state of hyperarousal. There was probably some dynamic with the dad. And there was also, he was, the problem. He is the problem. And he watched his sister have a normal life. And it probably wasn't a coincidence that the day of the prom, he gave her a black eye, because he was in a special school and they were restraining him all the time, and that's very traumatizing. He was talked about as a problem. The meetings were always about his behaviors. And his sister was living this, in his eyes, golden life. And when he moved out, sweetest staff on earth too, nicest person. He just changed. So, that's when I realized, we were looking at hyperarousal. We weren't really looking at someone who's so manipulative and so destructive with such horrible behaviors. That was a long time ago. And I was just starting to piece things together, like, okay. So, sorry, I went a little over. Now it's a good time to take a break. Should we take a 10-minute break? Is that okay? Catch up on stuff. I'll answer my emails. See you guys. All right. So we were at the arousal. This time I will note wherever we stop. All right. So that if we can look at these issues as the need to protect oneself, and that also that fear, they're fear-based. So if someone's referred to you with a lot of aggression, it's a fear-based. Property destruction, fear-based. That flashing amygdala. And this is how I'm staying safe. I've seen some horrible things. I saw this one guy. He went to a residential placement and he was abused by staff, physically abused, and he began banging his head. And the staff thought this had happened right before I started a job. They were working with this fellow, and I never met him, but he came. He was at the day program, and so he started banging his head. And so they were doing all kinds of things to stop him from banging his head, and he was saying, I want to die. And no one was giving him any therapy. They weren't really giving him a lot of support. And then he went back home, but then he had a pretty bad relationship with his dad, and they were suspecting that the father was very abusive, at least emotionally abusive, by the way he spoke at meetings and just the way he was. And the guy keeps banging his head and saying he wanted to die. And I hate to tell you this is a horrible thing. He did die. He got, he banged his head so much he died. He had an aneurysm and died. And so it was like a suicide. And I came into this situation, I won't say where, and I was like, nobody gave him counseling. He could talk, he didn't use a lot of words, but it was obvious that he was in crisis. They didn't give him support, they didn't give him counseling. They were worried about the actual behavior and putting a pillow there when he was banging his head and doing all kinds of things about the head banging, but nothing about what was going on with him emotionally, and no emotional support. And he died. It was a suicide. That was a suicide. So, and that was in a pure state of hyperarousal, like, it's so tragic. Like, people do commit suicide. I have worked with folks that were running into the street. I've worked with some people, this is a horrible story. I'm sorry for all my traumatizing stories, but this one woman was sexually abused by her uncle, who also had a disability. He was put in Rosewood back in the day. And she was actually in our agency. And then our agency was begged by the state to take this guy. And I said, we can't take him. That's a horrible trigger for her. Oh no, I talked to her about it. She says she's fine. Of course she's fine. You're an authority figure. You're the executive director and the director. They both talked to her. Are you kidding? We can't do it. We can't do it. We can't do it. As soon as she saw him, first thing he said was something really rude, like, oh, you got fat, like mean, just a bad guy. And she started jumping out of cars on the highway. Like, she would jump out of the car, say, I'm and she would get, and then so again, they just had a behavior plan trying to restrict her. And I said, no. This is not about her behavior. We triggered her. This guy sexually abused her and she didn't feel safe around him. So, and she was jumping out of cars. Finally he left, that guy, and she eventually calmed down. She had to have a couple of hospitalizations. But she wasn't safe. And that was attempted suicide. She attempted suicide by jumping out of that car. People attempt suicide, and we don't address it. We address it as a behavior sometimes. But because you guys are doing this, and now you're going to help so many people who have been so misunderstood. So great. You're going to help a lot of people. So I really think it's important to do the psychoeducational piece and identify the triggers with people and talk to them about what trauma is, identify them, educate them. Wow. It makes sense. Like, I started meeting with her, like, oh my gosh, I can't remember, somebody else was doing therapy, but we were all trying to support her. Like, oh yeah, we totally get that you don't feel safe, that they took your uncle. This was your safe place. This was the one place that had helped her after all these years of her parents allowing that abuse to go on and different things going on. And then she was in jail for a while. I mean, a terrible story. This is the one safe place, and the one safe place became unsafe. Identifying the triggers, educating them, helping them to advocate for a safe environment. So here's a tricky thing that I like to talk about because it's very important to me. Be careful. You're going to probably working with folks, and I'm sure some of you have already been in this situation, right? Where that something is not right in their residential setting. And I'm not talking about abuse. I'm talking about discomfort or not getting what they need, or they are not doing things right. Yeah, of course, we know we have to report abuse, but less than abuse, but still creating a lot of problems, right? I am very careful to empower that person to advocate for themselves, because the minute you start picking up the phone for them, that's going to be what your therapy is about. Because these are folks who don't have a lot of power and don't believe in their own power, right? They don't believe they have power. And you make that phone call, that's who you become, somebody who can help them. And I mean, literally help them. I remember I was supervising therapists in this one school for folks with disabilities. And this one social worker, her entire session was with everybody was just picking up the phone. Okay, we'll call this one. All right, you don't like, oh, your residential person didn't feed you when you were hungry and they said you couldn't eat and blah, blah, blah. All right, let's make a phone call. And so right in front of that person, they're calling the manager. I mean, so that's all those folks ever wanted. They never did any kind of internal work, right? Because, oh, here's someone who's literally helping me with my issues, when the most effective thing we can do is teach advocacy skills, right? Who can you talk to and what can you say? And what I do frequently with folks is I will role play that advocacy. Okay, you don't want to tell your house manager that you don't want to live with them. Who else can you tell? Well, you could tell the coordinator. Okay, how can you do that? Oh, I can call them. Okay, what will you say? Let's role play the phone call. Okay, you want to do it in person. Okay, let's role play. Okay, you're going to set up an appointment. Let's role play meeting with them in the office, making the case for why you want to move, right? And the more you do that, I mean, that's a great gift that you're giving this person that they can have for the rest of their life. So, this one woman that I told you about who now is moving back with her mother, she was living in a situation that she didn't like at all. And she was feeling very powerless. So our whole processing was, how do you call a meeting? Call your service coordinator. Do you have her number? Say you want a meeting. What are we going to, and then we role played the meeting, what we're going to say. And then we wrote out the agenda for the meeting, right? Behind her back, I told her manager she needs to move. And I'm telling her to have a meeting. So if she says she wants a meeting, we need to do it. I made that phone call and said, this person really needs a meeting, but I never told her. So I might still do that work because it's a bad situation and you want to help this person. But the minute we let them know we're doing that, that becomes our role in their mind. And that's so limited. And that just perpetuates this, I'm the disabled person who needs help, which is not what we want to be doing with folks, right? We want them to really get the skills, get the sense of empowerment, get the sense that you have rights and you deserve them. And, that's why sometimes people say, oh, I don't like it when they go, you feed right into them when they're in therapy. When they go to therapy, they come out and they want all kinds of things. That's right. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes into we on an individual level, we do have to help them be able to advocate for themselves, but also that system change too. So we can do that in the office and that's really good. But if they're going to go back to a group home or back to wherever it is that they live and they're going to continuously get shut down, it's going to be harder for them to want to continue to do what we're teaching them. So even if we can find what you mentioned, how they're oh yeah, they leave the therapy and they want this and they want that. Okay, well, if they're with you, then maybe you can be that person, if you're coming to sessions and we can work with you too, so you can help support them when they're in that, because they're obviously lacking that education too. And they just want whatever's going to be simple, keep them quiet and make their day easier. And just a random thing that I've noticed, especially working with Reach and being in the group homes or being in mental health, is the people who need the highest level of help are working with people with the lowest level of training.
Yes. So true. And it's terrible, isn't it? And then sometimes you have people that are really gifted. And the other thing, Portia, is that we're not giving them the right training. Because they have all kinds of training, med administration, bloodborne pathogens. They're not trained in active listening. They're not trained in just the basics of supporting folks. And yeah. And
I was going to say, because this can be of any of our patients who aren't used to advocating for themselves, who aren't used to having a voice.
Exactly. That is so true, Liz. And thank you so much. Exactly. Like this is a universal, right? And I love Mary. Mary was saying the assertiveness skills, right? Like I feel I've done that so much. I don't know if you want to elaborate, Mary, on
The I
that,
feel
how
when
you approach
can
that.
you, and then I like the I feel when you can you, and even the DBT, they have one that's I think and assertiveness skills, and really modeling mindful communication, blaming communication. And with kids, and this can even play a role in adults, when their caretakers try and speak for them, like, oh, they don't like that, or they don't like this, or the kid tries to tell the parent to tell me something, I immediately stop that. And I'm like, no, you're not always going to be there for your kid. And this can work for adults too who have caretakers. They need to be able to say it. And I'll even ask kids, like if I'm playing a YouTube video or something, do you like this video? And if they just kind of look at me, I'm like, no, say to me, I don't like this, because that's okay. And when I was a teacher, if my kids came to me about something stupid, I would like, go tell the person you don't like it. Like we have to teach kids it's okay to say their opinions, and adults with disabilities, obviously. I'm speaking more about the population I have the most. But we have to teach them to say it, because we've grown up in this culture where kids and people with disabilities don't say their needs. They're just supposed to go with the flow, but hello, let's give them the skills to respectfully and politely say their needs, even if it's just, I don't like that.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much. That's great. That's great. Yeah, and those I statements, right? Yeah, it's so important. And that is something I have spent a lot of time role playing, like, okay, because no one can argue with how you feel. I feel blah, blah, blah.
Writing it out, all of that, and really teaching them those statements and having them correct them. Like I have them go and correct like a list of 10 statements that are blaming and not I feel statements.
Oh, I love that. I've never done that.
It really works, because think about it. Nobody teaches this in school. It's not learn these socio-emotional assertiveness skills. And so if we can be the one to give it to the clients who feel like their caretaker, like one of my clients in a group home, and she feels her caretaker does too much of the work. If we can give it to those who are working with so many different organizations to be able to talk to them respectfully and politely, but get their views across, we've done our job, because I don't want to be there for them for 20 years doing this.
Oh,
Case manager.
exactly. I love that. That's so great. And then it's so exciting when you see them do it and they come back and they're like, yeah, I said this.
Came back and was like, yeah, we had a good talk. The person's doing better. Like, and we talked about other situations in her life when she would need to apply that. And truthfully, this works for both neurotypical people and people with disabilities. We just aren't taught these skills. Let's teach these skills. Let's teach them to advocate.
Exactly. And
Even if you look at like
Adults
emotional
in my
needs,
class
where their emotional age is, they can do it.
neurotypical.
and what did you say, Liz? And Mary, why don't you say the
I
last?
get
Oh, go ahead.
I get adults in some of my groups that don't know how to do it, and they're neurotypical.
Yeah,
She's right. They just don't. You just don't get taught how to politely say what you need and what you don't.
exactly.
I always look at like emotional age of people, especially people with trauma or people with disabilities, where is their emotional age to meet them where they are. And that comes from having worked with everywhere from like early Head Start up to like 80 people in their 80s. And even at an emotional age of like 6, you can coach people to say, I don't like that. Please stop. And a lot of people can be coached to say that, and that people with disabilities or people with a low emotional age can learn to advocate for themselves on an age appropriate level.
Exactly. And I love that concept of emotional age, because that's, emotional age. We're not talking about cognitive age.
I look a lot at what's the emotional age, what's the age of trauma, what's the age of adoption or foster care placement, and where do they fall in certain categories, because I can't treat people at their chronological age a lot. Even I don't always act my chronological age.
Me neither. That's great. Thank you. Yeah. And then wherever and I think what's so powerful is when you give acceptance. right? So you meet them there, just meeting them there and accepting that, hey, that's cool. Wherever you are is cool because we're going to take a journey together. We're going to go on these next steps together. Not like, well, I need you to come here because, and so often kids and people with disabilities are constantly told where they should be, what they should be working on, right? We have this ridiculous system in the disability world with adults of everybody has to have goals and you're working on their goals several times a week. And then you have, check the box and the data of working on the goals, which is a constant message that you're not good enough as you are. You better learn
My
this.
goal is just for them to have a safe place to talk and to process out life's things. And so like having that goal has been so helpful in just having a place to document. And then I can again, like, do you feel like this is still a safe place to talk? What can I do to make this safer? How do we places? Because sometimes it's not that they need goals. Like some of them have been in therapy for years. It's just that they need a place to talk outside of where they are.
I love that as the goal. That's so perfect. And that's so relevant for adults with disabilities because so few places are safe.
Or
Emotionally safe, right?
around people and never able to, like, if you live in a group home or something, you need a place to talk about the group home.
Right, exactly. A really safe place where you can dump, like anybody, like neurotypical, right? Everybody, we do need that. That's great. Yeah, and they're just surrounded, right? They don't get a break. They do not get a break. That's wonderful. Okay, so share my screen again. Okay. Here we go. And so that psychoeducational piece is really helpful, and I love what you're talking about, and it's the real goals, the goal of emotional safety, and then the power of acceptance. Hey, you're great. And I always just tell people like, wow, you're amazing. Like, I don't know if I could have gone through what folks go through. I don't know if I could have done that, and still come out like you're doing as well as you are. And I honestly mean that in so many cases, like, wow, you've kept going and it's amazing. So here, I think it's, I wanted to just touch on the importance of the grief work. So I had created this trauma program at the ARC Baltimore where we took folks with, and I can show a little video about that. We took folks with where we knew they had a trauma history, and we had group work, and group work was so effective there. And we had 3 phases. In fact, I think I will just show you. Is it okay if I show you the video about it? I think I'll just do that. It's easier than, but what we found, we had 3 phases. We had trauma, the trauma work. We then built a positive sense of self or identity, which is a big piece of the work we do. And then we worked on helping them find a purpose and a mission, something they can do, not just be the passive recipient of everybody's help, right? And but the group work ended up being amazing. And I'll show you, I'll have to find this. Okay, I will. Okay, do I have to stop and start again? Wait a minute, I think I better stop and start to make sure I optimized the sound. Okay. Don't mind me while I talk to myself. You think after a year of doing this constantly, I'd get a little better at it. Okay. And I hate watching myself, so I might have to walk away. And I wore the most ridiculous necklace. I didn't remember that we were being recorded that day. Oh, well, here we go. You hear it? It's a rainy day, too.
I'm I'm Becky Riley-Olin. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor and a board-certified music therapist through the ARC Baltimore. I'm one of the therapists here at the Healing Center. We lead a variety of therapeutic activities here to address trauma. So group music making, songwriting, therapeutic singing. We also do art-based activities, therapeutic movement in the form of stretching, and yoga-based mindfulness and deep breathing.
The program is divided into 3 sections. So the first section is intensive trauma work. And interestingly enough, during that period, we actually found that the root of everybody's trauma, even though we have people with horrible trauma histories, terrible accidents, one witnessed her mother stabbed in front of her, you know, many losses, but the root of all of it was grief and loss. Second part is building identity. And that's what we're engaging in, you know, in part 2, that we really want folks to have a strong sense of self. The last section is that discovery of a purpose and sense of mission. Part of that mission might be, you know, I can be somebody's girlfriend or boyfriend or husband or wife, or I can work. In fact, we've already seen great changes in motivation levels. And to get that sense of purpose, like my life can have meaning.
So our average day here at the Healing Center always includes a welcoming song. We sing the same hello song each time we're here. It's great bonding, it's great connection, and I think it really facilitates our ultimate goal, which is healing. We always do a check-in as to how we're doing, how we're feeling, and what's going on in our lives.
Most of them, when they come, they're very shy, they're real quiet. But through the efforts of the Healing Center, you can see them open up, they talk about their past. They support one another. I think that's one of the greatest parts of the group is they became their own little family. And they all support each other, and it's really nice.
I think when we all started the program, the intent that we had was to create a place that was safe and comfortable, that people wanted to come back to. And for a lot of the folks that we work with, they have never really had experiences talking about how they feel other than being told by somebody that what they're doing is wrong or the way that they're expressing those feelings. The people who come on a regular basis have been making some really big strides in being able to put a label on what that feeling is. This has been an awesome service for the people who attend, but also for us because we've learned more about what people need from this kind of program.
I feel safe here. I feel happy to help my other friends here. They need support too. I'm not the only one needs support, they need support too. It's really helping me here. Learn to take a deep breath, learn to not get upset, you know, or cry. This center helps me a lot. Yes, and I love it here.
Our ultimate hope here at the Healing Center as clinicians is to truly assist the individuals we're supporting in working through their trauma so that they're not so stuck and that they're really able to move forward in their lives.
It's the highlight of my week to be able to come 3 days a week and see these people growing and becoming new people and letting what is inside of them out. And they help each other out in ways that we never could. I mean, there may be a day where somebody comes in and you can tell that they're vulnerable and they're hurting. And we're sitting around trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we step in and make this better? And then someone in the group next to them just gets up and goes and gives them a hug. And that's the beauty of working with a group, is that the group comes together to support each other.
I learn how to talk it out, my feelings, and everybody's feelings. I listen to them too. I'm glad I came here.
So that's my goal. My goal is that they will leave, you know, with these issues resolved, with a sense of who they are, and then a sense of how they can make a difference in the world.
So one little thing. I would love to tell you that it's still going on, but it's not. Oh, well. You know how life is. But what's very powerful was having group. And it's very hard to do logistically, but right now I'm doing 3 groups on Zoom. And we were able to get people, hooked up with we were able to get a grant and get some iPads and things through another ARC actually. And that's been really good. We have, we've been doing it since July, once a week, 3 different groups. And folks, it's really helped a lot with COVID. But that group work is so amazing because people see, they see themselves helping others, like that woman, Tracy. And Tracy, after all this work, she had a lot of trauma over a terrible loss, a grief, and she did all this grief work and she was very shut down, and now she's working. So she has a job and is doing really well. So, and they kind of decided she was someone that they wouldn't find a job for, that couldn't work. They put everyone in these categories. And, but she just blossomed. Now, oh yeah. And I kept telling them, Tracy wants to work. And then we, built her up to go tell them you want to work. And she's got a job at a grocery store. So, but so there I found that the group work was really the core of it. So I asked that guy, Matt, and he really ran a lot of this, the healing center. And I asked him, of all the things we did, because we did music therapy, using the expressive therapies were really helpful. So we did music therapy, art therapy. We did not have a certified art therapist. So we did artwork, a lot of artwork that was not art therapy. Let me say that for the record. But and the music, we did actually have a certified music therapist. So all these people were hired to write behavior plans, and we just reorganized ourselves and created this. And we still wrote some plans, but we had this wonderful little safe place for people. And then we would take one group from September to June. People would heal, they would make progress. They would start working or advocate for themselves to do more. They'd be sitting at day programs doing nothing. And then they come back and go, I don't want to do that. I want to do things, And then we would take another group from September to June. So we just worked intensively with them for that period, rather than here you're in this group for life, which often happens in the disability world, right? So it was a beautiful experience. And it reinforced for me the power of group. And doing group work, really helpful. Okay. And now I'm okay, back to, okay. Oh, this is the wrong one, of course. Sorry about that. Okay. So the grief work. On my website, KarenHarvey.org, and I sent a bunch of stuff to, here we go again, I definitely sent it to Gabrielle, may have sent it to Karen also, but I sent the Goodbye book, but it's also on my website, KarenHarvey.org, and it's just helpful in terms of doing grief. The grief work. And I have found that the grief work, when you're working with adults, is so critical, because often, let me see. Can you see my screen? It said it's paused. Okay, never mind. Let me start again. Okay. So having a concrete tool can be very helpful. That's why I came up with these workbooks. Also, they really reinforce the sense of identity. So with adults, when you're working with adults with disabilities, often when they've had a loss, the person that they've lost was so central to them because they have so few relationships that are not paid. So if they've lost a parent, even a grandparent, it's so devastating, and many feel like and I lost my value along with, is there someone that was not paid and valued me? And that grief work is so big. So do what you do with grief. You guys know, but these workbooks help as well. And even staff turnover, you know, small losses are big. Even losing a friend or having a staff leave, because there's so much staff turnover. The latest statistic I heard was 45% turnover in the country on staff in the disability world, which is crazy, right? And it was 40%, but with COVID, it went up, of course. So it's really high. So many people, they're devastated by it. They get attached to a person and then that person is gone. And, you know, sometimes the grief work we're doing is processing the loss of staff. I think, Karen, you had mentioned that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so true. So I think that's really important. And I wanted to take a bit, and you know what? I think I might have put this in the wrong place to talk about autism. I think I'm going to switch this and we'll have the autism before the grief work. But I wanted to put this slide in because I really feel like it's important that we just talk about autism. And Karen, you had mentioned something, and a couple of other people, when we're talking about folks with autism, you know, we were talking about that hyperarousal and then the hypervigilance that we see a lot with autism. It's probably a good idea if you're going to train therapists to just spend a little time talking about autism and spend some time. So what I'll do is I have a bunch of videos we can watch next time on autism. And I want always assume intelligence. Like, people are very smart and there's always high receptive skills, even if the expressive skills aren't there or aren't that good, right? People understand so much. And then there's a exquisite sensitivity, and there's all kinds of sensory issues, as we know, and that creates its own type of trauma. So people have been bullied and they're very, very sensitive. In fact, here's where I'm going to show the bullying tape again about autism. And this is maybe a good place for it, because you guys not everybody saw all the videos I showed. I have a couple of really good things on autism, but they just take too long and I don't want to go over. So I'll show you something really short. And then when we come back, I'll show you the longer ones next week. And then we'll end. Oh, why do I keep doing this? I wonder about myself. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. Some of my screens don't want to go away. Okay. Okay. Here we go. All right, guys. Sorry I take so long with everything I do. It's me. I'm old. You'd think I'd get it down by now. Sorry. Okay.
Karen, we accept you just the way you are.
Yay! Thank you. I'm healing already. Thank you. Okay. And I think this is powerful to show, and I guess not all of you saw, because not everybody saw everything. But these people talking about being bullied have autism, and they're also explaining what it's like to have autism. And I think it's very powerful.
Do you think it's harder for people on the spectrum to find love and companionship?
Yes. We weren't born with manners like you are. We have to learn all our social cues.
I tend to overthink things a lot.
I have trouble with reading people's emotions and body language.
Too sharp noise can harm my brain.
I do have trouble socializing, maybe making decisions.
I have social anxiety. It's like you're in a room with lots of people and you're told that one of them has a knife. And if you talk to them, they will stab you.
It's like being in a transparent box. No one can hear you, no one can, well, they can see you, but they can't interact with you. You can bang on the wall, but you can't get out of it, so it's very lonely being in the box your entire life. Because no one can get in and you can't get out. And no one can understand you.
I just want to share my life with someone very special and to show her that my disability is not an obstacle, that I'm capable of falling in love.
When I was a kid, I actually found it difficult trying to be friends with others.
I've been to 3 schools, so I always get bullied all the time.
There'd be pushing, there'd be name calling, there'd be people trying to take my hearing aid.
They figured that I was disabled, so it's easier to pick on me, I guess. Pick on the weak.
Well, I would just say in high school it was more like I was just treated like dirt. There were these few girls who, they said I should ask this person out. I didn't realize it was a complete setup just so they could just reject me, just as a way of mocking me, really.
Didn't tell my mum that I got bullied because I always get these bruises on myself and that. Yeah.
I just wanted to get out of school, you know, I just couldn't take it anymore. I had to get therapy because it was really dark times then.
Does it still affect you?
Yes. Oh yeah, the scars don't go away. The negative thoughts.
I think, being bullied have made me who I am. And if I wasn't bullied, I would have been someone completely different.
My autism, I feel it's what's given me my creativity.
It is harder having a disability and going through life with a disability, and you got to keep moving on with life. Like a phoenix, rise up again.
Because I've got a disability, I'm on the spectrum, people are always going to look at me as different from them, and I know I'm different from them, and that's fine, so if we're all the same, the world would be pretty boring.
That's right. I just, every time I hear her, I just get so moved. She's like, well, so I love showing that in terms of, I show it in terms of the context of everybody's being bullied. These are people who are on a reality show, who have parents who are supporting them, finding a relationship. Most folks with autism, their families don't want them to have relationships. A lot of times they're worried about somebody getting pregnant, or they're worried, and there's so many different things, but here's the people with the most support, and still how bullied they were, and also their description of having autism, like you're in a room and someone has a knife and you don't know who it is. Like, I can't tell who's what. I don't know what's safe and what's not safe. And so I'm like wary of everybody, because one of them will really hurt me with that knife. I just thought that description was so apt, just so apt. And so I'll show something next week, but I think when working with folks with autism, again, assume a real intelligence and understanding and sensitivity. So much sensitivity and so much understanding that just can't be expressed, which is so frustrating, right? If I had more time, I would show it now, but I think probably it's a good time to wrap up. We'll stay on the topic of autism and start, if that's okay, start next Monday with the video that there's actually 2 that I'd love to show. Talk a little more about autism, and then we'll move into, and I'm making a note so I know where I'm leaving off. And then we'll move into the positive identity approach and the healing, and just, you guys have everything you need. It's so exciting that you're going to be doing a training. Add your stuff, do what you're doing, put more things in, and maybe I would love if we could get together, in a couple months and just touch base and see how it's going, if anyone's able to do some training, and learn from each other, because you guys really are great, really great. What a group of clinicians. I'm so excited. It's like a dream come true for me.